Hello, and welcome to Married to the Movies. We are married to the movies as well as each other. And tonight we are going to be discussing Best Musical.
Okay, this is my beautiful wife Kristen, and I'm Jason. And as Kristen, the lovely Kristen mentioned, we are married to the movies, and we want you to join us. We don't want it to be an open marriage, but we want you to join us in our marriage with the movies, the other marriage we're keeping for ourselves. Um, so, tonight, or today, depending on where you're watching, we are going to be talking about movie musicals. So it's important to note that Kristen and I are both big fans of the musical in all of its forms. So I think the musical, right, in fairness, is really a theatrical medium. And we love theatre musicals. We love musicals by way of concept album. We love the rock opera. But when you can get that kind of energy and get that crammed into a movie, which is our first love, then it's like peanut butter and jelly.
That's
or,
right.
something
Peanut
that just,
butter
does it. So tonight we're going to talk about what we think are the five best movie musicals of all time, and that's going to be one that opens up a lot of debate. Because we're not going too far back, and we're going to get hit by the cineists with a bunch of Singing in the Rain and all of this stuff, and that's fine.
Right, it's fine. We're not taking away from
absolutely. But we're talking about more modern things that really resonate with us, and hopefully we can maybe introduce you to something that you may not be familiar with. You may want to go out and find, and we'll definitely help tell you how to find it and the best one of it to find. So before we dive in, we're going to have to settle a matter that really clarifies our position on what constitutes a movie musical. And I love anytime we can begin a conversation with the wonderful Criterion Collection on Blu-ray. Is a good evening. That's a good time to be had by all. So we're going to start by talking about Robert Altman's 1975 masterpiece, Epic Nashville, which is currently available on a Criterion Collection Blu-ray. I remember waiting for this for so long and having an old videotape. If those of you who are my age may remember the days when you had that 3 hour plus movie, and that meant it was going to be on 2 VHS cassettes, just sandwiched together in one cardboard sleeve. And then I bought the old Paramount Blu-ray, bare bones, and waited for the day when the Criterion Collection, in their infinite wisdom and generosity, would give us this beautiful set. Anyway, enough about the set. We're talking about musicals, and what Kristen and I want to establish first and foremost is that Nashville, great film about the country music industry and politics in the 1970s, that is often considered to be a musical, for the sake of our conversation, is not a musical. So it may seem strange to you that we're beginning a discussion about the best musicals by highlighting a movie that we don't consider to be a musical.
But we had to put it in there.
We had to.
Because it just didn't feel right to not include Nashville.
No. So while we don't consider it to be a movie musical, it's a movie about music, which is just on the outskirts of the musical. And if it were a musical, it would blow the rest of our list out of the water. Sorry, rest of our list hidden behind the chair. But it's not. It's a movie about music versus a movie that uses music to draw the narrative forward. So, for example, I think a good example is James Mangold, who made the Logan movie that most of you have probably seen, also made the Johnny Cash movie Walk the Line. Walk the Line is not a musical. There are songs all throughout the movie, but we wouldn't classify it as a musical. It's a biopic about people singing and playing music. And that's the way we feel about Nashville. Great film, set in the 1970s, made in the 1970s, about politics, about America, about people, about humanity, almost like a documentary in the way it's filmed and the way Altman frames it. It's like he literally went in and created his own cinema verite situation, but used actors.
Right.
It's like a documentary with actors, where he just put them in situations, let them pick their clothes, write their songs, and just took you through this very unique place in time. Confession, I'm not a big fan of the country music, but the music in this movie is perfect. It's phenomenal.
We should mention that every song in this movie that's about music, not musical, is written by each of the actors. So Robert Altman is a genius, as you know, went in and had each one of his actors write each one of their songs. So to think that he had that foresight to just know that that would add to the just natural flow of how everything was gonna go, because as we know, Robert Altman always loves to kind of just allow life to unfold in front of the camera, which is one of the reasons why he's definitely on my list.
Absolutely. And interestingly as well, Keith Carradine, who portrays one of the characters, and he is in a few other Robert Altman movies, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, Thieves Like Us. His brother, David Carradine, actually plays Bill in Kill Bill, for any Tarantino fans. A little trivia. But he wrote a song called I'm Easy, which actually won the best song for the 1975 Academy Awards. So, he took a gamble, let the actors write their songs, and someone got an Academy Award for it. So, great film, masterpiece. Doesn't matter if you like musicals, because it's not one. Doesn't matter if you like country music, because this movie will actually maybe make you like country music, because it's just such a great film. It's a masterpiece. Go see it. Go check it out.
And go pick up the soundtrack as well.
And pick up the soundtrack, and we'll show you. I won't even get into all of the features, but it's a beautiful set. Beautiful set. And Criterion Collection, if anyone that's watching this in real time, it's the 1st of November here, right now, 2017, for your time capsules. And Barnes & Noble has just begun its 50% off Criterion sale, which is a highlight of each and every year, twice a year. It's beginning now, so no excuse not to pick this gem up. All right, so let's go through the rest of the list. Top 5 best musical movies, true musicals of all time. Christian and I are both going to grab a Blu-ray because we've got a tie for top 4, and we've got a tie for number 4, which would make it 4 and 5. So Kristen will show her pick, I'll show mine. I'll show mine first.
Okay.
That way we can honor your pick as probably the more accurate of the two. Coming in as a tie for number 4, which, we've got 5, you can view it however you want, is Tim Burton's Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. See if we can give you a good look at that. Excellent film. I remember, catching this. We saw it opening weekend or something. Great on the big screen. And a truly amazing film. What makes this movie so great is, we mentioned that we're fans of the musical. Stephen Sondheim, who wrote the stage musical in the 1970s that this film is based on, is a genius. He would be to musical theatre maybe what a Robert Altman would be to cinema. Just a really natural genius that really has a masterful and unique voice in music. You marry that to Tim Burton's unique vision as a filmmaker, and you end up with this brilliant movie. Starring Johnny Depp, and, maybe people don't realize necessarily, but the character of Sweeney Todd is one of the most difficult musical roles to sing. Johnny Depp had never sung, but Tim Burton believed that he would just be able to just embody this character to such an extent that it wouldn't matter. So Johnny Depp literally had to go away and teach himself how to sing arguably one of the most difficult singing roles in musical theatre, just to bring this film to life, and actually scored a nomination for Best Actor in the Academy Awards. If you care about that stuff, we care when it aligns with our opinions, and then when it doesn't, we care less. Many of you may be the same way. So, you should know that. And actually, this is just, some random DreamWorks Blu-ray, but has some really great features. It's got Burton, Depp, and Carter equals Todd, a behind-the-scenes look at the collaboration of Tim Burton with Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter, press conference about the movie Sweeney Todd is Alive, the real history of Sweeney Todd, because this is all based on, real English, history there. Just a ton of stuff. I mean, it's jam-packed. This little bare-bones looking disc has almost as much content as your typical Criterion edition, which definitely makes it worth picking up for any film lovers, even if this isn't your cup of tea. Important to note as well that this works very well as not just a musical, but a horror movie, and that's what kind of really sets it apart from most of the things that we'll be talking about today. It's rated R, and this disc tells me it's for graphic and bloody violence. They are not kidding. I mean, this is a violent piece of work, very
it's
graphic.
Like the Scorsese.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It's
pretty brutal. I would, almost Argento,
right.
With the razor blades,
so
and we don't want to ruin it. But I will say that this is Tim Burton's most violent graphic work. He's normally not in the R-rated territory. I think this may be his only. No. Well, interestingly enough, this is not his only R-rated movie, but it's one of his few R-rated movies, and it ties, in my opinion, almost ties with Ed Wood, his other R-rated film, as maybe his two greatest works as a filmmaker. That's serious filmmaking. We know Tim Burton's latest stuff, but this is Golden Age. This was maybe his last great work, and coupled with Ed Wood, marks two of Tim Burton's, greatest works. And I think when all is said and done, you get a few Planet of the Apes and a few Alice in Wonderland. But Tim Burton will always deserve to be spoken of among the greats as a result, in my opinion, of Sweeney Todd and Ed Wood, which we'll save for another show. It doesn't fit with the musicals. There's no music. But it's a great film, and you should check out Sweeney Todd.
Alright, so then we're going to go over to, obviously I love Sweeney Todd. I'm not taking anything away from that. I let him go with that one. Just because, he's always got a lot to say, but that's why we love him. And this is one of my favorite movies, actually, La La Land. So, written and directed by Damien Chazelle. Also made Whiplash, which we have yet to see. I feel terrible that we haven't
it's
seen
on the
it
shelf.
Yet, but we bought
We're
it.
gonna get to it.
Yeah, we'll
it's
get to it. So, heard a lot of amazing things about that one too. But we had
it was a gift, just in case the gift giver
oh yes,
watches. It was
that's
a great
a good
gift,
point.
which we appreciate.
Right, of course. I did say we bought it. We didn't. But we would have if it hadn't been given. Yes. So. Anyway, so this movie is really great. From the moment it, you put it in, I do believe I remember you saying, specifically when we bought it that day, I said, let's just go ahead and put it on. Like, the kids are running around, we put it on, and probably about 30 seconds into the first song, you saying, this guy is the greatest singer in the world.
Yeah.
Because
just
it
some
hits
rando
you,
in the background,
right? Just some
but
guy.
The music and the way it was
and
filmed.
the sunny California,
Yeah.
I mean, the Technicolor. So it's a masterpiece, and we saw it, thankfully we saw it for the first time in the cinema, which is, sometimes
ideal for this one. Should
right.
be enjoyed on the big screen.
But unfortunately, if you haven't seen it already, it's okay. Just definitely
back.
right, see it. because the music, just the visuals, everything about it is just wonderful, and it will have you just singing the songs and humming them in your head for days to come. In our case, months. Anyway, La La Land, very good movie. One more thing I will mention about this is I noticed in particular the directing in this movie from the beginning. It's kind of hard when you have so much going on in like a movie like this because of all of the great music and the eye candy and everything, that you kind of get distracted and you're not able to really focus on the great direction, but it's there. And when a director is able to draw your attention to certain things that, if it's not like I'll say Bergman, esque type thing where it's just a room with two people and you're able to really focus on the filmmaking, this is going to be a little more difficult to grab people's attention when it comes to the direction. But he was able to do it because I definitely noticed. And I will say that one of my favorite things when a director does this is to take the camera and to use it as like an actor, and that's what I notice a lot in this film. It feels like the director is like a character, and it's interacting with the audience and the other actors, and there's one dance scene where they go in and it feels like the camera is literally dancing and part of the choreography. It's moving and swaying. It's really amazing. So La La Land, check it out. It's amazing.
So we're going to jump back because we see a lot of, one of the things that struck us when we saw La La Land was how reminiscent it was of the next film on our list. Not reminiscent in storyline or even in a lot of the more straightforward and dramatic scenes, but when it came to the musical scenes, we could definitely see a lot of influence in La La Land from one of our favorite filmmakers and the next entry on our list, which is Ken Russell's film The Boyfriend. We went from R-rated Sweeney Todd to this G-rated gem. This is a true masterpiece. Ken Russell is a great English filmmaker, and if not familiar with him and his work, we'll probably do a little special on him just by himself at some point. But what he did is he took this classic English stage musical, wanted to make a movie of it, and instead of making a straightforward adaptation of the stage musical The Boyfriend, name of the film, The Boyfriend, he decided to make a movie about a group of performers staging this musical, The Boyfriend. So it's almost meta, and it goes to a very unique level. Great masterpiece. Visually, just amazing.
You can tell
you can see by the cover.
Mm-hmm.
This comes from the Warner Brothers archives. It is a completely bare bones Blu-ray. There is nothing on it but movie. But it doesn't matter. Just the idea that we're getting this film on Blu-ray is just an amazing thing in and of itself, just based on its level of obscurity. What we will tell you is this movie is a visual wonder. We're talking about music. We're talking about a feast for the ears, right? This one, you could actually just turn the sound off and just look at it, and the beauty of what you'll see unfolding in this film. It's like a classic Busby Berkeley kind of thing, mixed with a very avant-garde, almost predating MTV with just this big visual flair. I would say that the influence of this film has been understated because it's a visual masterpiece. It's a fun, enjoyable film. It's rated G, so it's good for the entire family. And it's just fun, enjoyable, visually stimulating, but still artistic and avant-garde enough to tickle those fancies. I will say that this is probably the most artistic an intellectually stimulating G-rated movie of all time.
That's true.
And it also makes our lists for best musicals of all time. Ken Russell's The Boyfriend. You are going to have to go to Amazon for this one, because you're not going to walk into Best Buy. No offense to them, I do good business with them, but you're not going to walk into a store like that and find this. This is a very rare, obscure thing, but definitely worth seeking out, getting your hands on, throwing in and enjoying. Boyfriend.
There we go.
All right. Okay. So we just mentioned Ken Russell, the filmmaker who made The Boyfriend. Ken Russell actually made the next entry on our list. And this is a very, very special film to us. This is Tommy,
Yes.
the movie. And we're big fans. Little known fact, basically our favorite band of all time would be The Who.
Definitely.
They're an amazing band. But we probably, if we were doing a show about best albums of all time, would list the album Tommy by The Who as the best album of all time. And this is definitely the second best movie musical of all time.
This was my first exposure to the band, The Who, and Tommy. Was when I remember my dad sharing this movie with me, and me actually walking into the living room and going, what is this? What are you watching? I must have been maybe 9 years old, and I couldn't get this movie out of my head from the moment I started watching it with my dad back years ago when I was 8, 9 years old, and I am still loving it to this day. It's a great movie, visually amazing, classic Ken Russell.
I would say there would be no MTV. There'd be no music television without this film. And his genius in taking a rock album, which has a narrative, but a very, very loose narrative, and weaving a really solid and strong storyline, and working with The Who and with Pete Townsend to kind of rewrite some of the songs so they could serve this narrative that he had in mind. It's also intriguing because Tommy is it's a rock opera. The movie is a rock musical. Little known fact, Ken Russell, the filmmaker, hates rock music. Not a fan of rock music at all. He's a big classical music aficionado, but he saw so much genius in the album Tommy that he put it up there with all of his great classical composers and works, and really wanted to make this film. True masterpiece. You get to see Jack Nicholson sing in this one. You get Tina Turner. You get Anne Margaret, who plays Tommy's mother, nominated for an Academy Award for an entirely sung performance, not a very rare kind of thing. Roger Daltrey, the lead singer of The Who, portrays Tommy, for those of you who may not know. Elton John has a big role as the Pinball Wizard. Just a great film all around, great cast, visually spectacular, unlike anything that you would typically have seen. And now, unfortunately, you'll see a lot of things that have been influenced by it. But you have to put yourself back in time, back to 1975. Again, same year as Nashville. And just imagine what it would have been like in a pre-MTV age to see something like this on the big screen.
It describes it on the back here as a weird, crazy, wonderfully excessive version of the Who's rock opera. So,
Accurate.
And perfect description, I would say.
Yeah. Bare bones, unfortunately. Maybe one day our dear friends at the Criterion Collection will pick this one up. But in spite of the fact that you're not getting a bunch of extras, you're buying the Blu-ray for the movie. So enjoy the movie, and plenty of books
and
out there.
And our kids love it. I always like to say, if the kids love these types of things. But when obviously we're huge Tommy fans and the Who fans, so we're listening to Tommy in the car and all kinds of different versions of the album and everything that different bands have covered from time to time, and the Broadway performance or listening to just all of that, and they're used to hearing it and singing Tommy, Tommy. So when they first saw this, they really liked it. Just being able to put the, kind of faces or visuals to what they were used to hearing. So, Tommy.
Ken Russell. Check him out if you're not familiar with him. So that brings us to number one. No. And what we'll do is we'll tease you, right? Because the entire time, if you've been, pricking up your ears, as you should be when we're talking about musicals, you're going to be listening. We have been playing the soundtrack quietly, hopefully, in the background for a number one pick. And it's been playing since the show began. Mm-hmm. So number one, my love, do you want to unveil it? Phantom of the Paradise. Yes. This is a 1974 masterpiece. Mm-hmm. Many of you out there, if you're watching this and you're sticking with us, and you're not just watching it because you're our friend or a family member, but if you're into this stuff, you're familiar with the filmmaker Brian De Palma, and he is very, very famous for Dressed to Kill, Scarface, Carlito's Way, The Untouchables, Blowout, crime, murder, suspense, mob kind of films. Mm-hmm. But way back early in his career, this auteur wrote and directed this masterpiece. Mm-hmm. This was Brian De Palma's, look at that, beautiful box art. Like, it's worth buying just for the body. You want to see the movie?
Right, look at it.
Yeah, I just want to see it. Anyway, Brian De Palma decided to update The Phantom of the Opera. This was before Andrew Lloyd Webber, before the Broadway show and everything else, the West End show. He said, you know what if The Phantom of the Opera was in the 1970s, which was not a period at the time, that was just a time period he lived in. And instead of it being an opera house, it was a rock and roll club. And then he said, you know what, for good measure, I'm not just going to throw in The Phantom of the Opera. I'm going to go ahead and throw in Faust. The story, the old German story of a magician who sells his soul to the devil in order to gain greater powers. So, it's a rock musical that combines Phantom of the Opera, pre-Andrew Lloyd Webber, so no one was thinking of the Phantom of the Opera as being a musical. It was classical literature or an old, Universal Pictures monster movie. Phantom of the Opera meets Faust meets rock and roll. So really a truly unique film. It plays in many cases like a horror movie. It plays like a classic Brian De Palma movie. There's a level of suspense, there's a level of mystery, but then it has just amazing music.
Paul
Williams. Many of you may not be as familiar with Paul Williams. He was kind of a big deal for a bit in the 70s, but he's really well known for writing some Muppet songs, Rainbow Connection for the Muppet movie. He also wrote many songs by the Carpenters. He
is just like the sound of the 70s.
Sound of the 70s.
Right,
he wrote Three Dog Night.
Right.
Three Dog Night, just an old-fashioned love song. Mm-hmm. So really well known as a songwriter in the 70s, really well known as a singer, and he's also an actor. Mm-hmm. And he portrays, in addition to contributing the original soundtrack and composing that for this musical, he portrays the film's villain as well, and is just perfect. I mean, you can't imagine anyone else playing the part. So it's a brilliant, brilliant film. I used to be obsessed with this film in college, and then that obsession continued well after. Had an old VHS copy that I wore out, then a DVD, and then was waiting forever. This was like probably top 2 most wanted Blu-rays of all time, and it finally got a release a few years ago in this amazing edition. Most of you who are watching this know about Scream Factory, which is the horror offshoot of Shout Factory, another competitor, or the next in line maybe to be the next Criterion Collection, because they release phenomenal sets. This one is 2 discs, amazing special features, documentaries, audio commentary. One of my favorite things is Paul Williams, who we were just talking about, who contributed the soundtrack, gets an excellent interview on this disc, just for this disc, by Guillermo del Toro. Hopefully you know who I'm talking about with that. So to have the great filmmaker Guillermo del Toro interview Paul Williams about Phantom of the Paradise is amazing. And del Toro often cites Phantom of the Paradise as being possibly his favorite film of all time, and a major influence on his work. He shares in that with Edgar Wright, another great filmmaker. It's a masterpiece.
Speaking of influences, I mean, just like all of what would have never really come had it not been for Phantom of the Paradise.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah,
influenced Andrew Lloyd Webber to make that the musical.
Like, that's definitely more popular than this. And
it started with Phantom of the Paradise.
Right, here it is. It started with this.
So, definite, absolute masterpiece. And we cite this as the best musical film of all time. I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to say that it is right up there on the very, very short list of all-time greatest films of all time. It's just that good. So, track this one down. Whether you're a horror fan, a Brian De Palma film fan, a fan of amazing Blu-ray releases chock full with 2 discs worth of all of those special features, a fan of, unique and interesting 70s movies that really represent just the craziness of that time period when it comes to rock music and that sort of thing, or if you're just a fan of amazing Blu-ray box art, definitely one worth picking up just to have this on your shelf staring back at you if nothing else. So that is our list of the best musical movies of all time.
And we'd like to hear your thoughts as well. Weigh in. Let us know. Give a little comment. We
and
don't
go
care.
check them out.
We like the haters too.
Yeah, go check them out.
We want to be debunked.
Yeah. But you call it Phantom of the Paradise. It's just that good.
Right.
It's just that good.
If you've seen it.
But we challenge you, give it a try. See if you can.
Try.
All right. Well, it's been fun. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.